The Virginia governor's race is under the national spotlight as media outlets look to it as a predictor for upcoming federal races. But what are the issues that are important to families right here in the Commonwealth? And how will this race affect them? We're going to talk about that today. Welcome to Speak Up Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candy Cushman, and I'm joined today by our president, Victoria Cobb. I find this election season really fascinating because of the historic role that Virginia is playing in sending signals to the rest of the nation. But it's also very sobering at the same time because so much of what we do on a day-to-day basis here at the Family Foundation, what we are defending, the values we're defending every day, is really at stake in this election.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, Virginia, every year is an election year, so it's a little bit, but this is the big one, right? So we've got the most offices, so you see the most commercials, you get the most mail. And yeah, actually, our issues are always just deeply at stake because they're passion issues. People feel strongly, and there's deep divides on them. But what's interesting in particular here is that we're seeing that they're actually front and center in the campaigns, which is not always the case. Parental rights is just forefront, as is the life issue keeps coming up too. So those aren't always as top of mind and in the headlines as they are in this particular election.
Yeah, usually things like abortion and parental rights get buried in these races. So it is interesting how they've gotten right to the top. And it's also fascinating, as I was saying, to see how the rest of the nation is watching what happens here. For instance, you had to get up at the ungodly hour of 5 a.m. to do an interview for Fox and Friends the other day. What did they want to talk about?
It's actually that issue they wanted to talk about. They were interviewing on why McAuliffe was all of a sudden bringing the life issue up to the front and center and trying to make that a big deal. And what's funny about that is it's to avoid the parental rights issue. He's doing that to avoid another one of our issues. So it's kind of funny to see our issues sort of headed off at each other.
Thank you, McAuliffe, for bringing both of
That's fine. We'd like people to be thinking about those when they go to the polls.
Well, this is all getting right down to the wire with the election less than a week away. And now what's interesting is we have an action team that engages in a lot of door-to-door voter education efforts, and they're getting a close-up view of what's really on voters' minds.
Yeah, early on, if you talk to people on our team or people that were out there at the doors, they would say, oh, the economy, pandemic, and education. Well, guess what? The other day, our team literally said pretty much the only thing they're hearing about at the door is education and parental rights issues, which is fascinating that it's actually taken such a role.
Yeah, far and away, education in schools, the biggest thing these people are talking about when they open that front door. What are they exactly concerned about with schools?
Well, we knew they were going to be concerned that in a lot of places, their kids didn't even get to go to in-person school. So we knew that was going to be on the table. But now on the forefront are things like critical race theory, that they're aware now there's this politics and these political agendas in school. And then they're also aware of these issues over transgender bathrooms and the fact that we're now having these policies that jeopardize the safety of their own child. So there's really a lot of things at play. And they know that parents are being boxed out of school board meetings.
What do you think's cutting across party lines with education issues? What do you think both sides of the political aisle are concerned about?
Moms are moms everywhere, whether you're a left mom or a right mom, a red mom, a blue mom, whatever it is. That interest in your child is unparalleled, and you will do anything to protect your kid. And so it is interesting to me that schools, when you talk about what's going on there, everybody's watching, everybody's paying attention, everybody cares. And especially, I think when you insult parents and you say they don't matter, they shouldn't be involved, it doesn't matter why that parent's involved in the life of their child, they're offended.
Saying they don't belong, essentially.
I mean, that was McAuliffe's statement in a debate was just that there's no real, that they really shouldn't be driving their child's education. And then the Secretary of Education, we've talked about this before, kind of piled onto that. And so I think that gets everybody up in arms.
Well, a secondary issue that we're hearing about door to door is also the economy. What are people concerned about here in Virginia with that?
Well, it's been, I would say, a long time since people visually saw how the economy is stalling out. When you visually, you go to the gas pump and you see those higher prices. You go into the grocery stores. I was kind of shocked yesterday. I mean, I walked in a grocery store. There's just a lot of empty shelves. So there's supply chain issues, there's pricing issues, and people are feeling it in a very real way in their pocketbook.
Yeah, I was at a gas station yesterday hearing people griping about it with not too choice language. So I think it's definitely resonating. Interestingly, also here in Richmond, there's a casino issue, and a lot of voters we talk to in person don't even know it's on the ballot, right?
Yeah, this is a little bit frustrating to be part of an effort trying to stop this casino from coming because, of course, people wind up in addiction and it harms families. And yet, a lot of folks think it's already kind of a done deal because the casino people come in with all these billboards and all these. I mean, they just
They are
pound.
everywhere.
They are everywhere, and so people think it's a fait accompli that it's already here, it's coming, it's just a matter of being built. And in fact, no, they can stop it. We found 73% of those that we had hit at the door just had no clue. And what's interesting is it's actually on the back side of the ballot. So people have to actually flip their ballot over only for the casino issue to vote. So this is kind of fascinating. How many people are going to flip that ballot and which side is going to be flipping the ballot? So we're trying to inform our people, turn it over and vote no.
I think it's worth mentioning there's a lot more than just the governor's race involved here.
Oh, absolutely. We hope people realize that, all the commercials, most of the stuff you're seeing is about the governor's race, but there's a lieutenant governor that breaks ties in the Senate and has a real voice in our government. We have an attorney general up for grabs, and that we know has been huge. Our attorney general has been leading the cause nationally on some of our issues on the wrong side. And so people need to know that position is really important. And then there's an entire House of Delegates. So that's your elected official that comes to the state level government with the closest tie to your neighborhood. They are the most aware of the things that matter to you.
Okay, I think it's fascinating when you share how I think you talked about before how the lieutenant governor was a tiebreaker vote in this abortion issue. Just break that down for us real quick.
Yeah, sometimes people look at party control of a body. So our Senate happens to be 21 Democrats, 19 Republicans, and they think that that's what it means for an abortion issue. But actually, incidentally, we have one Democrat in Virginia who's been voting pro-life. And so actually, when you have an abortion issue, so far, those votes have been 20-20. And so literally, that means the lieutenant governor who presides over the Senate gets to make that determining decision. And so we can't just look at partisan divide sometimes. We have to actually look at how do they vote on the issues and realize that there are more players at stake, like the lieutenant governor.
Yeah, so that's why these other offices are important. And that tiebreaker vote, by the way, was what brought in some of the worst abortion policy that we've had in a long time.
Yeah,
so
it
could go.
repealed 50 years of pro-life policy with one vote that was a tie-breaking vote. So it's a big deal.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in if you're just now joining us for Speak Up Virginia, brought to you by the Family Foundation. For more information about us or the topics we're addressing, you can visit familyfoundation.org. That's familyfoundation.org. House of Delegates, real quick, why should we care about that?
Well, I will tell you, some of the craziest, most left-wing, terrible policy has been originating in the House of Delegates lately. So that's one reason to care. And the other is that any piece of the wheel can block the process, right? So if you just get a good House of Delegates, they can block bad legislation and it'll be over. If you get a good House of Delegates, for example, you put a pro-life piece of legislation there, it goes over to that tie Senate, you get a good lieutenant governor, now you're making progress on the life issue. So
yeah,
the House of Delegates really matters. And they often are the ones that go through the details of the bills. And I hate to say it, but details do matter. So those committees are important.
Well, the good news is we do have something to help make it easier for people to understand that process. And that is our easy-to-use, nonpartisan tools to help educate voters on where all these candidates stand on biblical issues that we care about, like life and marriage and parental rights. But before we get into that, let's just touch a little more deeply on some of these issues that we are concerned about as Christians and how the election impacts them specifically. Let's just start with marriage.
Well, Virginia hasn't been on the right track on the marriage issue for quite some time. As you know, the court has told us we have to allow same-sex marriage, but it's worse than that. There's a constitutional amendment that was put forward to change our state constitution, and what it would do is it was not only going to repeal the wonderful traditional marriage statement that we have in our Constitution, it was going to rewrite it. And the rewrite included things that wasn't just simply we're going to allow same-sex marriage. It was we're going to respect and consider equal all marriages of all parties. And it didn't even limit it to the number two. So we're talking about, are we going to open the door to polygamy? These are things, it's a 2-year process. And so the next House of Delegates and next Senate gets to vote on this and they could stop it. So these marriage issues really do come down to this election.
And if, we are seeing happening movement toward overturning Roe v. Wade, if that ever did happen with the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage, if our state, had taken away wording protecting traditional marriage, that leaves us in a vulnerable position. So that's another reason this is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about, we've got a Supreme Court decision that could move the ball forward for the life issue. We want to be a state that's ready and poised to make progress there, not have elected people that are going to head it in the other opposite direction. If it becomes states' rights and we really can control that issue from top to bottom, we want to make sure people that value human life are in the driver's seat.
Absolutely. Well, moving on, I do want to get back to this easy to use resource we mentioned, our 2021 voter guide that people can get for free. It's online now at vavoterguide.com. Victoria, walk us through real quick how to use this voter guide.
Yeah, well, it is totally nonpartisan, so it's easy for churches to use. And so we've thousands and thousands are out in churches right now. But actually, at this stage of the game, it might be easier for people to go on that website, vavoterguide.com, and grab it there. But it just shows you the side-by-side comparison of the candidates. So you can, what do they believe on life, marriage, all these issues, and you can just literally scan all these offices and decide who aligns with your own values.
Well, it's that time again. Time for our Inconceivable Moments Award. This is where we're featuring examples of the absolute lunacy and craziness that happens when cultural leaders try to give guidance completely apart from biblical principles. And we're calling this the Liberals' Most Inconceivable Moments Award.
Inconceivable!
Just when you thought someone like Dr. Fauci or Andrew Cuomo might win the title for King of Political Spin, it turns out that we might have a school superintendent right here in Virginia who could be in the running for this title.
That's right. Last week, we talked about how Loudoun County School Board Superintendent Scott Ziegler had clearly said in a school board meeting that there were no records of sexual assault in school bathrooms. And yet he said this despite the fact that weeks earlier, the police had shown up for exactly that, a sexual assault in a bathroom. And now, this is very interesting. So first of all, this only came to light because the dad of the child actually went public. So now we all know this happened. But now we've even got the email where the superintendent actually emailed the entire school board to tell them that this incident had happened. And yet he's in this meeting saying there were no sexual assaults. Unbelievable.
That is totally crazy because you had this liberal school board member setting him up to say there's no record. And they all knew,
She must have known.
They had all gotten notice, apparently. So I just think that further exposes how deep the total disrespect runs for these parents in that school district and others across the state and nation. And that's why this is resonating so powerfully at a national level. That's why it's a national story, because people are resonating with this disrespect that parents feel from their school officials oftentimes. And now in the aftermath of all this, we have a Loudoun County School Board member, Beth Bartz, resign. But it looks like Superintendent Ziegler is really trying to save his skin with an apology.
Yeah, that's right. And what a spectacle of smoke and mirrors. I mean, this is ridiculous. He started out by apologizing for, quote, failing to provide the safe, welcoming, and affirming environment that we all aspire to provide. But then it seemed like he just started blaming the problem on other things like federal law and procedures and started talking about how it was really just all a misunderstanding and that he misunderstood and thought the question was about transgender and fluid students. It's unbelievable.
Let's just listen into that for a minute.
Lastly, I want to speak to my comments at the June 22nd board meeting related to bathroom. Board member Bartz asked a question about discipline incidents in bathrooms that I wrongly interpreted as incidents involving transgender and gender fluid students.
Okay, there are so many problems with that statement. First of all, I don't think how an attacker may or may not describe their identity changes the actual fact of whether the attack happened or not. So I don't know why he's trying to kind of camp out on, oh, I thought this was about transgender and gender fluid students. No, you still, Mr. Ziegler, clearly stated that there were no records of sexual assaults in the bathrooms. It was a yes or no question, and you answered no.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a case when your own words testify against you. But it's also ridiculous that we've all heard the report saying this alleged attacker was wearing female clothing and was reported as identifying as gender fluid by the people involved in the whole thing. So I'm not even sure what logical point the superintendent was trying to make.
Well, I guess we have to give this week's Inconceivable Award to Loudoun County Superintendent Scott Ziegler for misleading the public while apologizing for misleading the public. But in all seriousness, kudos to these parents for holding these school board officials accountable and winning. Thanks for joining us for this week's Speak Up Virginia, brought to you by the Family Foundation. Visit us at familyfoundation.org. That's familyfoundation.org. See you next time, and don't forget, we are stronger when we speak together.